Hey guys, Mike here. Welcome back to another video on the channel. I sound a bit ropey in this video, so do forgive me. I've actually got the coronavirus right now. I'm positive, and so is Megan and Max. We've all had it all week and seem to have still got it. But today and yesterday really were the first days where I was starting to feel a little bit more like I got a bit more energy. Thought I'd get out in the garage today for a few hours and get this new turbo installed. And this is the turbo I told you about in the last video, where the GT2052R wasn't really what I was looking for and was kind of a failed test run. It looked great, but it doesn't work. It's just not suited for my engine, which, you know, is my own fault. So I've got this one now. This is a genuine Garrett GT2052. You know, came really well packaged with supporting gaskets and the information with it, as you'd expect from Garrett. I mean, I got this from Speeding NU in Sweden. I get a lot of my parts from them, and not sponsored or anything, but genuinely a decent company, ship all over Europe. And the reason I'm mentioning it is it's just nice to actually deal with a company who reply really quickly and send stuff really quickly, and provide you all the information like tracking stuff, and you can email them and say, have you got this part, and they'll email you back really fast. But at the moment I've just got them on the bench, and I'm just doing some wastegate testing, just seeing what the old turbo was coming in at, and dialing in the new turbo just somewhere close to the old turbo, not quite the same, a bit under, just to play it safe. And today is GP's big day, and I know I've said that before, but I really hope it is GP's big day today, because when I test drive this, if it really doesn't work this time, if I fail, then I shall probably just end up putting in the old turbo with the old manifold and calling it a day for a while at least. This is the old turbo, and this is actually off the Mark 1 engine, my second engine, and the wastegate on this, on the specs, is 1.78 bar. So that's pretty high for a wastegate. This turbo can really punch up to about 26 or a little bit over 26 psi. I've tested the wastegate. I've got the compressor set up really low, as not to pump in lots of air really quickly, because obviously this is not really the right kind of hardware to be using to test wastegates. You kind of want a hand pump. But if I just put a little bit of pressure in this, the wastegate starts to come in, starts to move anyway, very slightly, at about 1.7 bar, exactly as the specs say. It's fully open at around 25 to well, about 30 psi actually, fully open. So at 2 bar the wastegate is fully open. So that wastegate, even on a stock turbo, is opening up at a pretty high pressure really. And when I first tested this Garrett here, it was opening at around 7 psi. To adjust the wastegate, I've just backed this nut off and wound this little arm back a bit, just so there's obviously more pressure required to open it. Anyway, I'm just going to look at this arm here while I very gradually put air in, and as soon as it starts to move, I'll look at the gauge. Okay, so it's starting to move now. So it's starting to open up just there, and that is 20 psi, so just under 1.5 bar. And obviously a little bit more pressure. Yeah, so around 25 psi. Guess my warranty's gone. So I've got this dialed back to 15 psi. That's when the actuator starts to open, at 15 psi. I think that's a pretty safe kind of number to start with really, and then go from there. But I don't want to go up too high really. I mean, I don't want to be matching this at like it opening at around sort of 22 psi. I mean, it's just, I think that's pretty high really, but that's what that came with stock. But they're not the same turbo. But this is the manifold extension, so I'm just going to get this bolted on, get it all in place. A bit of grease never did anyone any harm. Wise words. Garrett provides you with a gasket, and it actually has M10 holes on it as well, which is pretty good, because the manifold I built was for M10. It's very important that there's no leaks on this uptake pipe, because if there is, then we're going to see turbo lag basically, and sort of start to experience problems. Apparently basically I just pretend I know what I'm doing because it makes me feel better. But the reality is, you know, I'm just sort of like reading forums quickly in between shots. I'm actually not doing that, but I have done sometimes when I don't know something, but I'll always admit it. I don't know what I'm doing really. You know, it's all experimental. And I really hope this experiment pays off, but if it doesn't, then, you know, put the old turbo back in. Put a few studs in, and this is basically what I've made up. It's just a sort of conical flange. I've got a gasket, which I'm not sure whether if I bought the correct flange for this I would even need. Probably not, but this will work for a while anyway while I test it. I've left it slightly longer just to bypass all the crap I did around there, and I just need to then fit that on and do a lot of welding. This is obviously all mild steel, this is stainless, so yeah, I'll probably just use mild steel to weld this all on. I'm just going to fit this first, like that. Tap it on. That's it, you bugger. Let's see if this works. Might have to move this around a bit and probably go under the car. Oh man. I really hope this works and it isn't all just an epic failure. Ow! Yes, well, okay, the angles are totally wrong for a start. So, that's gonna go. Oh, it's disconnected. Wicked. I thought it would. This is all very much fun. Especially when there's loads of crappy oil and shit. Alright, well that's in there now. So I just need to get this in position and mark it, and then I'm going to weld it up. But, you know, I kind of need another person under the car. I've got the smallest amount of gas left, so I'm going to spot this in place, and then we'll see. We'll see. A couple of spot welds, no gloves, I know, safety, awesome. Lost my gloves, used them for something else basically. That'll do. Well, it's taken me a lot of to and froing to get this installed in exactly the position I want it to be in. I've got the manifold flush now, it's just got one nut on, but everything's flush, so nothing's, you know, touching the downpipe and causing it to tilt or putting any stress on anything. But other than that, it can come back out, and I pray to God I've got enough gas to get this job done. Sorry I can't bring you in close for the welds, but they're going to be hideous. No, it's actually, well, because they will be hideous, but hopefully not. It's more because my camera gear is it's very precious. I did it, and I didn't run out of gas. It's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. But I didn't run out of gas. This is all cleaned up now. Obviously these welds are mild steel, so they are going to rust. This is mild steel, this is mild steel, and a lot of flanges normally are, because it generally kind of is a bit softer, so it can kind of clamp down onto a surface a bit better, whereas stainless is usually a little bit harder. I'd like to build this whole thing from stainless. This is all stainless. This is stainless wire. The original one was stainless, and this is all stainless weld as well, so that would have been good for a long time. But obviously wrapping this around here probably going to see some corrosion in these welds, but you know, by the time that comes around, you know, I'll probably have other projects on years down the line, so I can always build another downpipe. It's not really a big deal. But I'm going to be using some exhaust wrap, not for any kind of performance gain, although some people use it for that, to like wrap exhaust headers, whatever, to try and keep the heat in where the heat should be, so the gas travels faster, you know, to get faster spool up and everything else in lower EGTs, because I guess you're pulling the hot air's travelling faster, so it's kind of being drawn out the head quicker. That's the idea, but I don't really think it does a massive difference. I'm doing it for heat under the hood, basically under the bonnet, to keep engine temperatures down and stop heat soak getting into other components like the brake system and stuff. So I'd wear gloves with this. I got mine from Bill Temmer, although I wouldn't recommend their heat wrap. You can get better stuff on, you know, online, like eBay and everything. But it's obviously got like a fiberglass element to it, so it will kind of mess you up. You soak it in water, apparently, from what I've read, and I'm going to wrap it from down to up, and that way, if you wrap it from down to up, it overlaps itself a little bit like a roof tile, so when water does go on it, it doesn't soak into it, it just runs over and goes down, so you get a little bit of better kind of corrosion resistance, really, from doing it that way. Yeah, I think I'll start there and just start going round. It can be a bit slippery at first and will feel a bit like a waste of time. If you soak it in water, it generally stretches a little bit more, whether when it's dry it's kind of next to impossible to use in a way, unless you buy a different one. Then I'm sure there's loads of different types, and I just overlap it by 50%. Pull it tight. You can just put like a hose clamp there or something, a hose clamp the other end, and you know, keep it in place. But once the engine fires up and this gets hot, it will kind of just stick, really, and you'll have to kind of rip it off later down the line, and it will leave some of itself behind. So it changes when it gets warm. I'm going to wrap the rest of it with it on, because obviously it's going to be a bit tricky to tighten the bolts up, but I've cut this down a bit, so it's a bit on the smaller side. Hopefully it shouldn't interfere too much now. We'll see how this goes on, see how much warpage there's been. Hopefully not a lot. Okay. Imagine there's probably been a bit of warpage, given the trouble I'm having. Oh yeah, there has been some warpage, alright. Oh crap, that is a bit of warpage. Oh no. Yeah. So there it is, hopefully all finished and sort of operational. Exhaust is wrapped, this is wrapped, it's all buttoned up. I've got a heat cover on there, had to cut it a little bit just for the actuator. I mean, these are generic ones, so I guess it's designed for one with an external wastegate. I could tidy it up around there a bit, try and button that up a bit more, but ultimately it's just going to protect other stuff in the engine bay from getting super hot. I mean, performance wise, you're probably not going to notice any difference, but you know, it'd be nice to think that you're doing everything you can. But try and install it now. In you go. There we are. Let's see if this goes in. Okay. Yeah. It's pretty much in, actually. Just gonna stand here and watch you burn. That's okay, because I've got no more money. Got no more money. Oh, so here we are. And this is my favourite part of the job, you know, when water's dripping in your face from the exhaust wrap and bits of crap. But if any advice for somebody new out there who wants to work on their car, never lie directly under what you're working on because of your teeth. You know, if it drops, a lot of the time you can just get clumsy, like you're me, and if it drops on your teeth are way more expensive than the Jeep parts. So well, they are here in Sweden anyway, so I'm just tightening up this last bolt. I've got the exhaust door position. This is how I want it to be. The clearance, I can get my hand around the exhaust. The only issue might be here, but I do have a 3-link kit on the way, and a long arm 3-link kit, so I didn't, so I might do, I have to wait and see what happens. But yeah, that would obviously fix this issue altogether, because all this would just completely go and I'd have to build a new transmission cross member and mount that on there. But we'll see what happens with the cab noise and the downpipe. And this is almost done. Well, it's the following day and everything is fully installed. The turbo's in and it's looking pretty good, much more suited to this size of engine. Obviously I've got the wastegate dialed in for 15 psi when it starts to open up. Hopefully I don't regret that. But the air intake pipe is just temporary. It's all I had really. I've bought an adapter that goes from 2-inch to 3-inch. So I can have a 2-inch to 3-inch adapter on the front of the turbo, and then 3-inch piping up to the air intake, which is 3-inch itself. And I've just drilled a hole and pushed a rubber hose in for the catch can. I had to build a bracket to connect the T2 manifold right at the end where it connects to the turbo to the top of the intake manifold. A little bit like that bracket I made the first time round with the stud, but I think this one's a bit stronger and way uglier. Every time I look at it, I'm just like, oh God, I really wasn't feeling well when I made that. It just doesn't look too good at all, but it's functional and I'll find a way to make it look good in the future. I'm more concerned that, you know, when you have a turbo mounted to an intake manifold, an outlet manifold, an outlet manifold, an exhaust manifold, there you go, I got there in the end. There's not really too much issue with leverage and vibration, because the closer the turbo is on that exhaust manifold, yeah, the tighter that unit's going to be. If you put an extension, you know, pipe on it, basically a manifold extension like I've got, you know, it's like holding your arm out and holding a heavy weight. It's just, there's going to be less, it's going to be more vibration really, and more leverage for it to break the studs off of the exhaust manifold and kind of screw everything up. So I've built a number of brackets really to support this structure and the infrastructure around it. And that bracket there bolting into that steel plate at the top of the inlet manifold is one of them. Now I know you might think, well, that's really stupid, Mike, because heat soak is going to go through that bracket and go into the inlet manifold. Well, you know, the speed at which all these gases travel, it really doesn't make a massive difference. I think it's probably more at idling speeds and stuff you're going to notice kind of heat soak to become a problem, whereas when you're shooting along, I think it's going to be all right. But you know, we'll figure it out. I'll figure it out along the way, and if it's a problem, then I have to change things up and get rid of that really flipping ugly bracket. But I also made another really ugly bracket, and it's underneath the vehicle, and that just supports the bottom of the downpipe, stopping it moving. So hopefully that's going to be okay. But you know, enough talking. Now I've got to start it. Obviously normal operating procedures with installing a turbo like this is to crank the engine manually to get oil into the turbo. It's already pre-oiled in this case. There is oil down inside the journal bearing. and I've just got to start it up and let it idle for about 5 minutes and then drive it leisurely without pushing it too much, which is a shame, but let's do it. Before I actually start it, I'm going to take out this stop plug I've got at the top here on this T, and I'm going to put in this oil pressure gauge, an analog oil pressure gauge. Like I said in the last videos, this is actually the incorrect one, and I can't find the correct one, and I don't trust them. So eventually I will put something like this in the dash and analog the whole system. So I've opened the doors, and it's going to get real cold in here very fast, but it's all running okay. You know, seems to start up alright, a bit grizzly, but hasn't been started in a long time. Oil pressure's normal, and you know, I'm just going to let it warm up, maybe give it 10 minutes, and yeah, then take it out for a drive, just see how it feels basically, and I'll take you along with me. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, I'm really nervous. Just going to drive along, let it warm up properly. Hear the transfer case grinding away. Got to hear that all flipping winter. So we're at about £5 a boost, 1,500 RPM at 60 kilometers an hour. There's nothing really. You can hear that turbo sucking. So 2,000 RPM. 80 kilometers an hour, just under, well, I say £13 a boost. That turbo is able to push a lot more power than the stock one, because if I dialed that wastegate down a bit, I think to be honest it's good, but it's just how it's going to do on a hill climb when I really need to push it. I just don't want too much boost, obviously. You know, we're just under £10 now. Well, let's say, yeah, 2,000 RPM, 80 kilometers an hour, just cruising along. Really feels good. If I put my foot down, we've shot up to £17. Now we're really going a little bit more, so it's responsive. You know, it comes in fast, that turbo, and puts in a lot of required air. Got some serious resonation, man. I don't even know what that is. Just a bit of the fender. I forgot to bolt a bit of the fender back, and it's having the time of its life out there. I'm happy for it. So if I feather the foot pedal, you'll see that turbo coming in pretty nicely, but to be honest, I don't know whether I've done this correctly. I think 15 psi wastegate operation seems fair for an engine like this, for it coming in nice and early. Maybe some of you guys can help me out, because you know, it'd be good to get second opinions. I know there's some guys out there who know their stuff and comment recently. You'll have to forgive me, I'm still coronaed, which is why I'm staying in my car and not going out into the street and stuff, but it seems good. The foot pedal's a little heavy with the cable. I'm not used to that, obviously, because I'm just used to the one spring, not having to contend with the spring on the pump too. got some grunt. She got some grunt, and it's coming in nice and low, exactly where I want it to, you know, nice and low. If my gear changes were better, then it might look good. There we go, all the way up to 15. 2,100 RPM, it's perfect. Feels really good. Just cruising along now, just under 2,000 RPM, about 5 pounds of boost. Engine temps are all normal, 80 kilometers an hour. Cruising along. So it's the following day. If this is the first video you're watching and you've made it this far, this is obviously the product of many months of work, and obviously there's about 7 or 8 videos before this, probably more, where I'm actually doing other things to build up to this point. You know, this has been a kind of a progressive build really in getting the engine to this point, and really the achievement was to put a manual fuel pump in instead of an electronic one, delete a number of required electronics to make the engine kind of more mechanical and easier to maintain over a length of time, to put a different turbo on that was more capable than the old one in terms of coming in a bit earlier and probably producing more boost too. So the engine is now more tunable with that turbo and that manual fuel pump, but you obviously don't want to go too far with it, remembering the engine that it is. And yeah, to basically just kind of tidy up the engine bay, make it easier to maintain. So if the turbo and, you know, anything needs removing like that, it's super easy to take out now, and I don't need to take off all of this stuff around the top there like I did before, you know, removing the intake manifold, the exhaust manifold, you know, really mucking around. It's a shit job basically to work on the engine. So now it can be done from the top with a few bolts at the bottom to just disconnect the downpipe, and it all comes out. And if the turbo fails, I know I can always just buy another GT2052 and bolt it straight in, and I can order that turbo pretty much anywhere in Europe, and it will arrive, you know, within a week or two at most. So it sort of makes the whole thing a little bit better. And this turbo here, this original turbo from the VM diesel engine is getting quite expensive actually. I mean, it's racking up more of a cost than that Garrett turbo in there, and that Garrett turbo is much better than this really in a number of ways. So, you know, I've kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve, and now it's really about summarising whether I've got the performance gains I was looking for within that safety margin of not going too crazy and not losing anything really. So I think looking at the way it drove, or feeling the way it drove, that turbo comes in now extremely early. It produces a lot of boost very quickly, and it basically ramps up to about 15 pounds, and then obviously you can push it more into 20 pounds if you keep giving it diesel, if you keep flooring it basically. But you know, you do have to kind of feel the engine. It's that kind of vehicle. It's not a modern car where everything's done for you. You have to drive it like a human, and listen, and the sound of the engine, and feel the foot pedal, all that kind of stuff. So obviously you don't just want to go, oh, what's going on? But you know, you want to get the speeds up and shift gear. You know, it's that sort of vehicle. So you can push it a lot more than 15 pounds at this moment, even though the wastegate is set to actuate at 15 pounds. But you know, it's really designed to maintain boost level, not just kind of like shut off at 15 pounds and not give you any more boost. It's not really the way it works. So I mean, looking at this turbo here, I see so much stuff online in forums about how the VM diesel turbos kind of top out at around 15 pounds and they don't give you any more. it's not entirely true, and you really just have to look at the data that you find online about the turbos. I mean, you can find all the information out there. I mean, as far as I know, there are 2 turbos that come with this particular engine. There might be more in other vehicles and other applications, but in the Jeep Cherokee XJ there might be 3, but the ones I've found or tested myself is this one, and I'll put the name of that turbo in the bottom right hand corner now, and the one I had previously. And the distinct difference between the two is this one has a slightly larger turbine at the back end, and it has twin blades at the front, whereas the other more standard turbo you get has single blades at the front and a slightly smaller turbine at the back end. The wastegate on that other turbo I used to run, the single blade one, I think opens around 1.5 bar. This one starts to actuate at 1.7 bar, which is around 24-25 psi. Now, when I had this turbo in before, I could only get 25 psi out of it at around 4,000 RPM. So when I was kind of going out in the snow wheeling, and I'd get stuck, and I'd start kind of like trying to get out of a situation where I needed flotation and momentum to like get over obstacles or whatever, or snow and ice, whatever you want to call it. Well, basically snow and ice, because that's what it's called. I'd have to ramp it up sometimes and build the RPMs up, and when I got up to about 4,000 RPM, I would see on the boost gauge around 24 psi. So within normal operation for these turbos on the VM engine, I think it's pretty rare that you would ever get them up to around 20 to 24 psi. I don't think they can build boost that fast, and I really don't think that the engine nor the turbo would probably enjoy being that high constantly. So although the data says, and other people say online too, yeah, but this engine can run over 20 psi at some points, I'm not entirely certain whether it would be a clever thing to do for me to set that wastegate at 20 psi and you know, and ramp the engine up, given how quickly that turbo's building boost. You know, you put your foot down and it's whoop up to 15 pounds within a second and a half, and you know, that's coming in really fast, like just over 1,000 RPM, like let's say 1,200. The turbo's coming in already, you know, really early, whereas beforehand it was around 1,700 RPM that the turbo would come in with this turbo here. So this one obviously spools up slower, and the one before it actually spooled up slower than that, coming in at just before 2,000 RPM. So my experience really with all of this isn't sort of from a technical perspective. That there are people out there who I chat to actually in the comments section on these videos, and know a lot more than I do. I'm just giving my first-hand experience of using the stuff I've used, and my observations and everything else. And I think with this particular engine, I think it's safe to say that having that wastegate of 15 pounds is good. I think that's where it's going to stay for me for a while. I could ramp it up even more to 20 psi, but the problem is as soon as I put my foot down, it's gonna that boost is just gonna come in, woo, and it's gonna go straight up to 20 pounds, because that turbo just kicks in very fast, and I think, you know, that might just be a little bit too much for it. I think the highest I got it to go whilst we were driving along in that test scenario was 18 pounds. So when I got to 15 pounds and I changed up and I gave it some more, started, you know, flooring it really built up, and it was around 18 pounds, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. It felt very powerful, very responsive. You know, it didn't feel heavy or slow off the bat. You know, you heard the turbo come in and it started pulling and the whole thing started moving, and I think that's as much as you kind of want to expect with this particular engine here. It's not a race car, it's a donkey. You know, it's a small, it's kind of agricultural diesel engine really. Whether or not I've got any performance gains in terms of horsepower, I probably have, and if I wanted more I could start to play with that pump there and start dialing the two things into each other. But really I need to wait for that new EGT gauge to come, because I have ordered another one, It's just the LCD I've ordered. The LCD basically burst some sort of surge, so I guess I'll put in like a surge protector for it or something and put it back in, because it's happened to me twice now with those LCDs popping on me. So it must be something to do with it just getting a surge of power on startup and it just blowing. So I need to figure something out. Maybe you guys can help me with that. I'm rubbish with electronics, as you probably know. But with regards to the manual pump, it's way more responsive than the electronic one. You know, with this setup I've got here, obviously I've deleted the MAF sensor, I've got rid of the number 1 in fuel injector, and I didn't need to do that really. And I still have my crank position sensor, because, you know, why not really? I mean, it probably isn't doing anything anymore, but it's there, and what's the point of clambering in and taking it out, as there'll be a hole in the bell housing anyway if I do that. But the thing is like on the bottom of that pump, and before I swapped it in, I only had a vague knowledge of this, has an advanced timing solenoid, and it's electronic, and when you start the engine with the electronic pump, you'll hear the RPMs are quite high. They're high for a while, maybe like 1-2 minutes, and then they drop down again. And I guess what's happening is you know, the number 1 fuel injector, the crank position sensor, and various other sensors, that maybe temperature sensor of the coolant, for example, are basically telling it it's cold and it's cold start. So it's kind of rotating the internals of the pump by 5 degrees and basically advancing your timing. Your RPM goes up, so the injection timing has been moved forward a little bit. You get that higher RPM for a while. Now I've lost that by doing this manual pump swap, because I removed my number 1 fuel injector. So I haven't tested it yet, but maybe if I put that number 1 fuel injector back in, I will get that advanced timing sort of facility back really. But the thing to remember is that advanced timing, I don't think that impacts the vehicle in normal driving conditions, when you're just shooting along and you want full power. So I'm not too bothered about that, but I will keep running it how it is. So I know that's a lot of talking at the end of this video, but there will be people out there watching this who are kind of enthusiasts about this thing, or they might want to try it, or they might want to laugh at me. And you know, this information might be interesting for you. I'm only talking from experience. That's all I've got, and logic, whatever logic I can muster up in my tiny coroned brain at this point in time. But I have some interesting things on this table here in future videos very soon that you might be interested in. Elite gear, because you didn't have enough money for anything better. So there they are, gears. 488 for the Dana 30 high pinion, and the Chrysler 8¼ 29 spline. With regards to the carriers I've got in there at the moment, I'm on 373, so I can go up to 488 without replacing the carrier. And yeah, basically that's the next stage. I've got all my re-gearing stuff back out again, so I've got the dial gauges, I've got the shims, I've got the gear paste, and all sorts of other stuff. Master rebuild kit there, so Timken bearings, and you know, all the seals and the bolts and everything else. I got the setup bearings that I made last time for the Dana 30 for the pinion and the side carrier, and I need to try my best to get the old bearings off of the pinion anyway on the Chrysler 825, so that I can make setup bearings for the pinion. Now the thing about the Chrysler 8¼ anyway, 8.25, is the actual carrier bearings on the side have no shims. You make a tool with a 36-inch nut on a big pipe with a socket on the end, and it's preloaded like the old Mercedes differentials, you know, like basically winding it in and then sort of fitting it in place with like a pin basically on a couple of nuts and stuff on the bearing carrier. So that shouldn't be that difficult, but now I've jinxed that, I'm probably going to blow all of this up. But that's something that's coming up anyway. Also picked up a set of knuckles for the WJ, mirrored as well. These are both right hand drive knuckles, so I can do some really interesting stuff with high steer and put a much smaller standardized drop pitman arm back on, or just a standard pitman arm. So that'll take a lot of stress off my sector shaft, because I've got a very big drop pitman arm on there at the moment, and I don't like that really with these tyres and stuff. So that'd be really cool, but obviously the main thing is it means I will put the Akebono brakes, double piston brake calipers on with the bigger discs, and I'll get those drilled for the XJ bearing hub. I just got to wait for some spacers and order some heavy duty ball joints for the top, and get the brakes. I'm kind of building up the parts for that slowly. Hopefully I'll get it done before the summer, before we go away. It'd be nice to be able to stop really well. I just want to say thanks to Ivan for the Knuckle. I contacted him on Instagram and he managed to find me this steering knuckle and send it over to me. This is a right-hand drive passenger side knuckle, basically. Really hard to find this, basically, so I'm going to get it shot blasted and get it powder coated. I'll probably get them both powder coated in like an orange colour, or maybe red or something, or maybe another colour altogether. But overall I've got some interesting projects coming up. But I'd be really interested to hear everyone's opinions about obviously what I've done with the engine there and the turbo, and what your thoughts are on max boost pressure and tuning the pump, and whether you think it's a wise move for me to set the wastegate for 15 psi and leave it there. As I said, I'm not an expert, and most of what I do is just through sort of practical experience, common sense, and a lot of reading and trying to get the right information from the right people. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm losing my voice now, I'm feeling a bit rough again, so yeah, I hope you enjoy this video, and see you very soon in another one. Goodbye.